Thank you very much for staying with us this morning. And in case you're joining us, you're just in time for the newspaper review. And as I was ending the bulletin, I talked about Simba Simba Kiage wanting to be here and talk about Manchester United. And he's here. Simba, good morning to you.
Good morning, man. All is good?
Everything is well.
From all perspectives, that is, Keitany.
I mean, everything is okay from all
perspectives. Are you sure?
I'm quite sure.
Okay, let me be very categorical in this critique. Ian Keitany, as a man who comes from the western part, is it the central? Where do you come from?
The northern part of the
northern part of this country. It is raining across the country. It's good news for farmers across the country. That is a good morning, isn't it?
Yes, and good. By the way, Simba.
I'd like to continue.
Simba. Yeah. By the way, I told you when it's raining, I'm Ian Keitany.
Oh, yeah.
Keitany is essential when it's raining.
Nah, dude. All right, let's go to the second greeting. Keitany, we've woken up this morning to Kenyans knowing very well that today there will be no mandamano. That's a good morning, isn't it?
Very good morning.
Good. So let's go back to what happened this weekend, Keitany. All of a sudden now, Man United is looking at crashing out of top 4 of the English Premier League after your team, without Casemiro, got schooled by a resilient Newcastle United. Is it still a good morning?
Yeah, very good morning.
You want
me to explain how and why?
Yeah.
You want me to do that?
Please.
Thank you very much. Listen, you know, the footballing bigwigs, PSG lost this weekend. By Friday, the German Bundesliga leaders, Borussia Dortmund, lost this weekend. Runaway Italian champions, Napoli, lost this weekend.
Yeah.
Carabao Cup champions, Manchester United, lost this weekend. 6-time Champions League winners, 5-time Champions League winners, Liverpool lost this weekend. So this weekend was just, we were just trying to motivate the young guns in the game. So it happens. Bad days in the office. If Liverpool, PSG, Napoli, Manchester United, Dortmund all lose in one weekend,
then
these are big teams.
Then who's Man United to win, isn't it?
Yes.
That statement. Who's Man United to win?
You know, as United, I'll speak on behalf of United. I don't want to speak on behalf of Chelsea because Chelsea are in a different category. We don't want to classify Chelsea among the teams that I've mentioned. But as well, you know, we know the league is gone. That's for fact and for sure. The league is gone.
Yeah.
We are battling for the Europa League and the FA Cup. You see? So our focus is not majorly on, you know, whether we diving into the top 4 or not, we still have the Europa League. If we win the Europa League, we play in the Champions League next season. So regardless of whether we make it to the top 4, which I believe we will, regardless of losing to Newcastle yesterday, meaning we are now 4th, not 3rd anymore.
It's going to be
level on points with Newcastle.
It's going to be a tough ask, isn't it, for Man United now?
It's a tough ask, but we'll focus on winning the Europa League.
Yeah.
But we'll talk more about that at exactly 9:15 this particular morning. Simba. A lot has happened over the weekend, like you said.
Yeah.
And I wonder what's on the standard this morning.
All right. There's just a lot of headlines as expected. By the way, some of the stories that I kept on telling you this morning, even before we went on air. Now, it's a story that has been covered heavily, and I would like to seek your opinions on this. It's essentially the first story that we covered this morning on a bulletin. It's talking about no demos. That's the headline right there. And by the way, we want to read this story into deeper details. You got to go all the way to page 4. This is exactly what it's saying. Intrigues that led to big climb down. That's the biggest headline right there on the Standard. And they're saying that after weeks of hardened positions, President William Ruto offers an olive branch by proposing a bipartisan approach through Parliament to resolve the issues, as Mio leader Raila Odinga calls off protests amid conditions. Keitany, just before you jump in on this, I would like to take you to page 4 of this particular story, and I'll see exactly what he's talking about here. And this is the biggest one that I picked. Ruto has issued what I regard as an important statement since the election. We have listened to diverse groups about the crisis facing our country. I welcome the olive branch by Ruto. That is a statement by Raila Amolo Odinga. Keitany, that it's now going back to Parliament. Like all the issues that you had, the cost of living, the opening of IEBC service, the reconstitution of IEBC, that it has to go back to Parliament. That is the deal. That's the olive branch. Like, let's go back to Parliament and solve these issues right there. But then, Keitany, majority in Parliament is who?
The Kenya Kwanza side.
Does it open another discussion?
It definitely will. It definitely will. It will play a very big part. And you know, if all this talks about the reconstitution, especially the reconstitution of the IEBC being taken back to Parliament, because at the end of the day, we do know that the battle in Parliament will be the battle of numbers.
That's it.
You know, the more you are, the better the chances of the proposals on your side, you know, going through. But again, bipartisan engagement or approach. Does it now mean we'll go back to having co-chairs, you know, to discuss, or committees with co-chairs to discuss the reconstitution of the IEBC? Because we do know how vocal Raila Odinga has been in regards to the reconstitution of the IEBC. He says the law was not followed, but President William Ruto on the other side has always been insisting that the law was followed. But now, if it goes back to Parliament, and William Ruto, by the way, referred to the 9th of August 2022, when it was forwarded to the Speaker of the House, that is one former Bungoma senator, that is Moses Masika Wetangula. But again, like you said, will it open doors for more showdown in Parliament? Especially having it in mind that most of the Kenya Kwanza legislators have been seriously opposing the concerns of Raila Odinga on the IEBC issue, led by the majority leader, one Kimani Ichung'wah. So it will be a very, very interesting battle in Parliament.
That's it, isn't it, Keitany? Because when we look at it, some of them have pronounced themselves on it. And even starting from, by the way, a man who has not spoken about it is even one at DP Rigathi Gachagua, but we know what its stance has been throughout. And if you keenly listen to what President Dr. William Ruto has been saying around this demonstrations issue, by the way, he's not been so direct, isn't it, on exactly where his stand has been. He's just been saying, well, we do not want to support anarchy, we should stop the demonstrations, we look for different ways to approach this. And I want to take you back to a statement that he did put out before he flew out of the country for his 4-day tour. Before coming back to the country, he did say, well, Raila Odinga, I mean, if you have a problem with the way we're running this country, do not terrorize the country, look for me. And that's a man right there, by the way, Keitany, who's saying, well, Bana, let's talk, you know? Like, let me come back and then we have a discussion. And it looks as if now President Dr. William Ruto has lived true to his intention right there. And this morning, we're going to get into a deeper conversation on what this is. Because, Keitany, you do remember that President Dr. William Ruto was fast at even suggesting creating the office of the opposition. And if you go back to 2022, even in his remarks after winning the presidential election, he did say, look here, I'm not going to malign you. We need you to play your role in opposition so that you could keep us in check. And in fact, if I could use this word, Keitany, he did say that I need a strong opposition. So you will see, it's a man who, you will say, Keitany, from the word get-go, is like we have to find a way to empower the opposition to actually keep the government in check. Now, though, it's gone back to Parliament. And whether we are going to see or get treated to more drama in Parliament again once this now goes back to the National House is just for us to watch and see. Keitany, there's another story here that I want to point to you. Again, it's a story that is covered on pages 14 and 15 of the Standard. And this is exactly what former IEBC chairman, you remember this guy?
Yes,
Isaac. So what he's saying, how politicians held IEBC captive. And just for what is a kicker to this story, now former IEBC chairperson in a new book says politicians have always tried to influence the appointment of commissioners and other decisions that puts intense pressure on staff. That story has been covered on pages 14 and 15 of the Standard. And if I could take you there, that's former Electoral Commission Chief Ahmed Isaac Hassan has opened the lead on how politicians, among them Azimio leader Raila Odinga, interfered with the country's first independent electoral body after 2010 constitutional moment. In his book, Referee of a Dirty Game in the Theatre of Kenya's Election, an insider's account, Isaac doles out insider tales of a commissioner held captive from outside, but also inadvertently reveals how his own maneuvers to win favor with politicians and interest groups, Keitany, opening a lead to what is even a current conversation right here as we talk about these particular demos that have been called off. Again, a very, very hot issue. No wonder part of those irreducible minimums that Raila Amolo Odinga was talking about there were reconstitution of IEBC. Read that story on pages 14 and 15 of the of the Standard. And Keitany, I should ask you, by the way, on this story here, on how government is out to muzzle media. And we do have the Kenya Editors Guild protesting. Najua kesho bwana tulikuwa fakwa, ilikuwa kesho ama Wednesday. Ilikuwa fa tutoe mashati tuende huko nje.
Najua it would have been a very interesting week for journalists out here.
Oh yeah?
Because if Raila Odinga's mandamano would have continued today, it would have meant that on Monday the Azimio la Umoja demonstrations.
Yeah.
We rest on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Wednesday we go for our own demonstrations. Thursday we again cover the Raila Odinga demonstrations.
Yeah.
Then Friday for journalists like me, we go home on off days. So it would have meant I'd have been at work for just a day. But you know,
but I would have expected you to be at the front line of those demonstrations because I know you faced the wrath of police brutality in the process of doing your job.
Tell you what, Simba.
Yeah.
Like I said, I took an oath to inform the public.
Yeah.
I'd have gone for those demos, but again, not only to participate, but as well to cover them.
Yeah.
You get? So regardless. But by the way, talking about those demonstrations and the Editors Guild, led by one Churchill Otieno, I believe, they raised serious concerns, not only on matters, you know, the government planning to shut down the media today if the demos were to be held, something that, by the way, President Dr. William Samoei Ruto said he will not do. Because in his own words, he said Kenya has come a very long way for them to decide that they can shut down the media. This is after Churchill Otieno and, of course, not only the Editors Guild, but as well AMWEC, I believe that is the Association of Women in Media in the country, said if at all a journalist would have been injured in what was to be the fourth leg of the Raila Odinga anti-government demonstrations today, then they would have not only, of course, gone to the streets on Wednesday to demonstrate, but as well, they would have given the government a blackout.
I'm telling you, man.
Because they were saying the police IG would have taken responsibility if journalists were to be injured in those demonstrations. So it is pretty interesting.
But it's Keitany, let me ask you a question. Because if you look at what President William Ruto said, again, that little jibe right there, Keitany, that even if they are against us, but that's your president telling you, bwana, hizi mastori mnafanya hapa, vile mnakava hizi vitu zenyu bwana.
You know,
we don't like it.
President William Ruto has mastered the art of, you know, it might be throwing or taking a swipe at you, but you wouldn't even notice. But I said, even if you bias against us, we'll still give you the freedom. And that is what the Constitution says. It's all about giving people the freedom to freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom, the likes of freedom to picket and do all that, regardless of what you believe in, whether you support the government or not. You can do whatever you want. This is a free country.
It's a free country. And if you listen to the way that it phrased that particular one, Keitany, it did say, well, the news that I'm getting, the rumors that I'm getting that today was supposed, I don't know, to shut down the internet, to force the media not to do their job, is saying that cannot happen in this country. And that was, for me, other than that little jibe right there of even if they're against us, Keitany, for me, that is the stance that a president should take in a proper democracy, because we do know the role that the fourth estate really plays in actually unearthing some of these things that we're talking about here. If you look at this story that we're covering here, that the Standard has covered here on our pages 14 and 15 of the paper today, I mean, Keitany, maybe now we could have seen black pages probably on Thursday, you know? Nothing. Like, we got nothing to report. Because then, in this country, we've been stopped from working. That would have been a statement from the media. And all these things that we're seeing here today, and by the way, without fear of contradiction, even DP, Rigathi Gachagua, has also been put on the spot by telling the media exactly what they should be doing. Keitany, because we have a code of conduct that we follow as the media. And if you have, and by the way, the way that you should address your grievances when probably we, the media, have done it the wrong way, it's well known. For a story to be complete, you need to have 3 parties involved. Like, you can actually go to court and sue if the media does a wrong story, or a story that you think has got the wrong details in it, or it doesn't have true sources in it. But then when you stand by the roadside and then tell the media, we don't like the way that you're doing your stories, but then you don't stop there. But then you stop there and not further go ahead to prove exactly how the stories have been done wrongly, then you are the one on the wrong. And that's exactly what the Editors Guild pointed out. It's like, we don't understand exactly why you have to keep on talking to the media. Tell them that we don't like the way you're doing your stories. If you're aggrieved in any other way by the stories that we're doing, then just go right ahead, Keitany. We do know there's a framework that has been put in place by even CA, there's the Media Council of Kenya as well. Go right ahead and contest any other story that has been done. But when you stand by the roadside and say, well, we don't like the way you're doing it, it just doesn't make sense.
And like the Media Council said, there's the Media Complaints Commission.
Yeah.
Write to them, tell them.
Just write to them.
Don't like how this and this is done.
Tell them, Ian Keitany went out and said that he has been tear gassed, but we have proof that he has not been tear gassed.
Indeed, I was. Indeed, I was.
You know?
It's a tough place.
It's a tough ask. That's why I'm even why would our president saying, well, even if they're biased against us?
And by the way, the same Editors Guild and they called on the government to compensate journalists who've been injured.
Yeah.
And my friend Eric Sinta, the NTV camera person, tells me is doing much better elsewise. He was injured on Thursday, and I don't think the government is likely to,
compensate. We know how that would go.
But regardless, talking about all that. I was scrolling, through Twitter, and I saw, there were headliners from both sides, both Azimio and Kenya Kwanza, who were saying, we will not engage, we must reclaim our country back. On the other side, the other guys are saying, there is no time for dialogue. And interestingly, someone was saying, it's funny how they've moved from 50 Cent to Celine Dion real quick.
What? Well,
but
for those who get it.
For those who get it. If you don't get it, forget about it. But as well on the Daily Nation, the front page is Reason at Last. That is the headline on the Daily Nation. Enough is enough. 3 people have been killed since the protest started on March 20th. And they have, portraits of President Dr. William Samoei Ruto and Raila Odinga. And what they said, and of course, like we do know, Raila Odinga said we stand down our demonstrations for Monday, but it is in doing so, we want to emphasize that we reserve the right to call for demonstrations should this process bear no fruit. Emphasis on what I talked about, because they said if there will, this dialogue thing will not bear any fruits, they will go back to the streets. It was I had to say, should there be no meaningful engagement or response from Honorable Ruto to our counter-offer, we'll resolve to resume our demonstrations after 1 week. So it's like Raila Odinga is giving them 7 days to try and resolve all this. If they will not be able to resolve all this within 7 days, we're back to the streets.
Yeah. So that means that then the National House Speaker, that is Moses Wetangula, has to prioritize the talks business, isn't it? You like to think that the president has already briefed him on exactly what the House business is going to be from today all the way to Friday, because then come Monday, if nothing is come out of Parliament, then that means that we'll be back to the streets again.
Yeah, definitely, if that is according to Raila Odinga. And it will be a very, very interesting week in Parliament, by the way. Yeah. This week will be a very, very interesting week. You don't want to miss.
You don't want to miss it, by the way.
Showdown in Parliament.
Because now, I saw, by the way, we're going to look at this, or now what's trending this morning. I did see Kimani Ichung'wah's tweet,
Yes, he tweeted this morning. True.
Saying, he was talking about something about how Parliament is the one that essentially is tasked with the mandate to talk about issues and draft issues around what people really want to change in the country. So you could see he's getting ready to battle in Parliament, It's going to be interesting.
Will always battle because he's one of the guys who've been very, very vocal, by the way, in regards to all these anti-government demonstrations. But we will see. Being the leader of majority, he'll have a very, very big role to play. And as well, we cannot downplay because the calling off of the the demonstrations and both sides deciding to sit down and talk. We cannot downplay the role played by various leaders who tried to pressurize those leaders to sit down and talk among them, the religious leaders. We do know how vocal they've been in trying to ensure that peace prevails. And by the way, last week we were here talking about the Delaware senator, that is Christopher. Is it Christopher Andrew? Was in Kenya, by the way, sat down with Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua when the president was away, and as well had a meeting with former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. And he was sort of delivering a message from POTUS, I believe, on how these leaders should come together, sit down and talk. Because at the end of the day, like we said, if these demonstrations continue, it is the local man who's getting, was feeling the pinch. Those small businessmen and women. Those are cab drivers, you see. So at the end of the day, it's a good thing, and I believe it's everybody's happy with the decision to, of course, call off the demonstrations. But the question is, will the demonstrations be done, or done with entirely, or will Raila Odinga come back after 1 week, like I said, if the talks will not bear any fruit? Simba, that will be very, very interesting.
That's indeed true, isn't it, Keitany?
Yes.
Any other story that we're looking at on the Daily Nation today?
I think most of the stories here, the stories that you've covered as well, the drama at Boma side of the poll results, that is according to the former IBC boss, Mr. Hassan. It's a very interesting story because by then it was the chairperson, and of course the CEO was one James Oswago. We do know the troubles that followed Mr. Oswago in terms of embezzlement of public funds, and it's a book that I believe everybody out there should look for and get to understand the view of what he or refereeing what he calls as a dirty game in the Kenyan political arena. Simba, interestingly, the Kenyan politics or the Kenyan elections, one of the of course hotly contested elections across Africa. So it is always very, very interesting. And let us talk about as well. There's a story here on the CBK boss. Njoroge's tenure is almost coming to an end.
By the way, Keitany, I'm sorry to jump in. Were we focusing on the big man, the CBK boss? There's another man whose tenure is essentially done as well. Safaricom.
I mean,
Peter Ndegwa.
Peter Ndegwa has been silent for the past few weeks. But I believe
kuna kitu imetoka hapo bwana.
Watu hapo unajua lazima tudeal kwanza na kule pesa yetu iko.
Najua alikuwa appointed, I remember in 2020 first on April Fool's Day. 2 years nini yake inafaa ikuwe imetoka bwana, imeisha. So mbona watu waongelelea hiyo story? Mimi nasikia tu watu wanaongelea juu ya CBK boss, na unajua the CBK boss should be coming out of office in June essentially. When the new financial year for the government starts, so the new bosses then would come in office afresh. That's what we have as a government to focus on, so let's make good business. But yo jamaa Safaricom amuongelelea yeye. Mimi nilikuwa nadhani the big headline ingekuwa Peter Ndegwa's short tenure comes to an end. All right. What's the story talking about?
In your own opinion, it talks about his mixed legacy as at the helm of CBK. In your own opinion as a business anchor and reporter, what would you term as Njoroge's tenure or legacy at the helm of CBK?
He was awarded the best performing CBK governor in Eastern Central Africa twice in a row. I think that was in 20, he won it in 20, if I'm not wrong, he won it in 2021 and 2020 as well, yeah? And they were pointing out to what he put in place then for the country to move out of the coronavirus pandemic in terms of monetary policies. If you ask me, my personal opinion, the issue for the FX position for the country in terms of our dollar position, I think akusema ukweli vitu zilikuwa zinaenda mbaya na huyo jamaa alikuwa anakuja anasema tuko tu sawa. I think that, only that. And when he came out and spoke about how a couple of individuals wanted to push him to send the country back into the Goldenberg era, if you do remember, and if he took a tough stance and essentially just said no, then tuko tu sawa bana. He did good, generally, you would say. Not majority of banks in his tenure have gone down, just a couple of them. Maybe look at the Mwalimu Spire Bank purchase to equity, maybe a couple of questions here and there. But other than that,
it's of course worth noting that you oversaw the change of the country's currency as required by the constitution.
Oh yeah. Lakini hiyo pesa bwana ni low quality vibaya tu sana.
Anasema ile tunamisi zile thao za kitambo.
Noti bwana inafanana gazeti. Unaguza hivi siku moja imeshakuwa mzee.
Just for the sake of the viewer, Simba, because we do know that Mr. Njoroge has served for 8 years because he was appointed on June 26th of 2015. His tenure came to an end, but he was again appointed for another term by former President Uhuru Kenyatta. Now, if by June, when his tenure comes to an end, of course he and Ms. Mbijiwe, the deputy governor, their tenures are coming to an end. If by then we don't have, just for the sake of the viewer, if by then we don't have a new boss, does it mean that the newly appointed deputy governor, that is Dr. Susan Kiage, will act as the CBK boss? Essentially,
that's what the law envisages. That's why you have one governor and 2 deputy governors. In the sense that the 2 of them are not at capacity to serve, then one assumes the overall role. Until then, they are essentially appointed as the governor. But Keitany, kitu bwana, tunajua vile itaenda. The current deputy, the newly appointed,
Yes.
Is that Ms. Kiage, isn't it?
Yeah, Dr. Susan Kiage.
Yeah, guess what? That's your next governor, bwana. Mkwe tayari.
Well, like Simba says, mkwe tayari, that is his opinion, mkwe tayari. But on the sporting scene, we, on the back page.
Is it Keitany, I'm going to ask a very proper
question. As we wrap up, yes?
Yeah. Is there any newspaper this morning that has covered the humiliation of Manchester United at the hands of Newcastle?
Listen, 2-0 is not humiliation. If 2-0 is humiliation, what about the 4-1? The 4-1 of the game between City and Liverpool.
You've not answered the question.
Yes.
Is there any newspaper this morning? Does the Daily Nation have the headlines?
That is a good thing with being the biggest team.
They don't have the headlines.
For deep state, they cannot do that.
They don't have the headlines.
They must have a small piece.
That's where I have a problem with sports journalism in this country. When you should cover the headlines when they matter most, you do not cover them. Because gazeti ni si hata mzito na hamna headline ya Man United. Mambo gani na watu walicheza saa 12.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we wrap up the newspaper review this particular morning, you can see how Simba is obsessed with Manchester United. It tells you how big that club is, bigger than the entire of Arsenal's legacy and the entire teams in London combined. But we'll talk about that at exactly 9:15. For now, we take a break. Simba will be back with a big conversation surrounding the demonstrations being called off and what next. Will there be a showdown looming in Parliament or not? Thank you very much. We'll be back in a few. That is Simba Kiage. I'll be back at 9 a.m. to talk about what is happening in the country. And of course, remember, it's Sporty Monday. Good morning.